Welcome to Automation OS tutorial number 2. In this tutorial we're going to demonstrate how to schedule tasks with a predecessor. The idea behind using a predecessor in the Automation OS sequence editor software is to set the order of operations for a number of tasks. For example, you can imagine any number of cases in industrial automation where there is a distinct task which must be executed first before the following tasks are done. And this really forms the basis of what you can do with the Automation OS sequence editor software. You can see I already have 3 tasks added here. If you'd like to review how to add tasks to a sequence, you can review Automation OS tutorial number 1, part 1. And we're going to interrogate these 3 tasks to learn more about predecessors. So looking at the tasks, the first task is labeled show message, the second sleep for 10 seconds, and the third task is labeled show message 2. Now you'll notice a few things. The first task in the list, show message number 1, there's nothing appearing in the predecessors box. We have our normal plugin and action selected as well as some parameters input. If we go to task number 2, sleep for 10 seconds, you'll notice one thing first of all. Task number 1 is highlighted in brown here. That indicates to me that task number 1 is a predecessor for task number 2, and sure enough, if we go to the predecessors tab, you'll see that show message is a predecessor to sleep for 10 seconds, and the condition type here is listed as finish to start. So in other words, task number 2 won't start until task number 1 is finished. If we go to task number 3, we'll notice the same thing between task 3 and task 2. Task 2 is highlighted in brown, indicating that it's a predecessor for task 3, and sure enough we see here task 2 is listed as a predecessor, finish to start, as in the previous case. Essentially what this sequence will do when we run it is to bring up a message box for a first message, and until we click OK, it won't start that 10-second timer. Once that 10-second timer is started, until 10 seconds is done, we won't see the second message box. So if all goes well, that's how things should happen. We'll then switch over to our work order launcher. At the top, we'll pick from the drop-down list, tutorial tasks are scheduled with predecessors.sequence. We'll select that, and then we'll click next, and we'll click next again, and then we'll click launch. So you'll notice our first dialog box has come up that says hello world, and until I click OK, that 10-second timer won't start. So I'm going to click OK, and we'll start the count, which will speed up for the sake of this video. And after 10 seconds, my second dialog box has appeared. So you can see that with the 3 tasks that we set out, had we not used predecessors, you would have seen one dialog box, a second dialog box, and at the same time a 10-second counter would start in the background, which you wouldn't notice. With the use of predecessors, we've made it clear that we want to open the first dialog box, then wait 10 seconds, then open the second one. And as we go through some of the later tutorials, you'll see how predecessors come into play and how they can actually be used to map out a fairly complex series of tasks within the sequence.